All right, guys, how are you doing? It's Thursday, March 12th, 2020. Welcome to another metallic episode of Music of Destruction here on YouTube, the best metal channel in the world, in my opinion, because I'm bringing you content that I'm passionate about and love. So tonight we are diving into a rather obscure death metal act that hails from Los Angeles, California, and formed in 1994. Today's review is of Coffin Text's The Tomb of Infinite Ritual. The band was formed by Richard Gonzalez, Emilio Marquez, who's also in Possessed, and Robert Cardenas, who is also in Possessed. How fucking cool is that? So we have Richard Gonzalez on guitars, Robert Cardenas on vocals and bass, and Emilio Marquez on the drums. Totally fitting, guys. And if you guys missed anything at all this week, just click on that eye up in the corner of the screen so you can get caught up on all of the latest reviews here on Music of Destruction. I would appreciate it very, very much. Now, what we have here with Coffin Text's The Tomb of Infinite Ritual is an instant, old-school death metal classic, very much in the vein of old Morbid Angel and Nile, but also stylistically stands on its own. There is so many different things going on here on this record. But those are the influences that spring to mind when I hear this masterpiece of Egyptian ancient-sounding death metal that is absolutely brutal and visceral as it can possibly get. The fact that Robert Cardenas is on vocals is a pleasant surprise as well, as his vocals are very, very incredible, very unique, and his bass work and forward presence on this album is definitely the star of the show. And Richard's violent attack on the guitar brings visions of ancient gods and demons from Egyptian lore to the surface, and Emilio's drumming is absolutely immaculately crafted on this album. This is old school raw death metal the way that it should be, guys. Now, the technicality and overall direction of this album really conveys an ancient Egyptian atmosphere as well that is very reminiscent of Nile, but as I said, very unique in its own right, ladies and gentlemen. And hey, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss anything. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Music of Destruction. Join the Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Music of Destruction. If you would like to offer your kind-hearted support and get access to my exclusive podcasts, The Seed, then consider becoming a pledge member on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/Music of Destruction. Select the $5 tier. The Seed episode 18, The History of Black Sabbath part 3, on there right now for you guys. The Seed episode 19 is going to air in just 9 days. Going to be covering the history of Motorhead. Going to be a great series. Also, for $1 per month, I will review an album of your choosing once per week. Just please, guys, no slam or deathcore. Thank you for the support over there on the Patreon page. I do appreciate it. All right, so as I was saying, this album is a brutal, complex monster of ancient Egyptian lore and atmosphere that you can definitely feel through the instrumentation and lyricism and vocals. There is so much here that is a breath of fresh air that harkens back to that vicious old school death metal from the second wave. And it's not even funny in my opinion, as this is another instant classic that belongs aside greats like Altars of Madness, Severed Survival, Dawn of Possession, Legion, and of course, Mortal Throne of Nazarene. I mean, seriously. This album is basically a trip straight into madness and ancient Egyptian mythology and all of its eventual chaos and historical events, and it does it really well, and at times it sounds like something that is completely on its own. Yes, there are those old school death metal elements and brutality here, but there's also a lot of groove influence in here as well to make it something very unique that stands on its own. Also, the ideas and concepts that are incorporated here through the instrumentation really make it something unique in the world of death metal, in my opinion, and not something that is being done by many bands in this day and age, unfortunately. In fact, I will go on to say that this is one of the best death metal albums I've heard in the last 10 years. I instantly connected with this album from the minute I hit the fucking play button. Robert, Emilio, and Richard are so in sync on this album that it boggles the mind at just how natural this album feels from all three of these maniacs as you get pummeled into dust from its brutality, but also fully satisfied from its groove sections of headbanging inducing hooks and crunchiness that will satisfy your desire for variation that oftentimes can be very lacking within the world of death metal. This is a genre, after all, that can get very boring, formulaic, and predictable at times because of the ongoing trend to be the fastest, most gory, and most brutal band. Well, I'm happy to say that this is not the case with Coffin Texts at all. This is a band that avoids trends or trying to make brutal music just for the sake of being brutal. As Coffin Text is brutality with fucking purpose and a solid, firm statement. I'm going to be buying this. There's no doubt about it. There's an incredible atmosphere that peaks itself out through the bombardment of brutal pounding drums, crunchy flesh-ripping riffs, and sonic thundering bass and vocals that lets you know that this is indeed Egyptian death metal. And there's a lot of darkness buried in this magnum opus of death metal brutality to be found here, especially on the track The Sacred Eye. So without further ado, let's listen to this track right now here on Music of Destruction. Enjoy. And we are back. And yes, what we have here with Coffin Text, the Tomb of Infinite Ritual, is a sonic, violent Egyptian death metal masterpiece, in my opinion, that really solidifies itself as one of the most intense, brutal, but meaningful, honest records of the last decade. I know there were a lot of greats that came out this year. Possessed, Revelations of Oblivion. You had a lot of good stuff with Cattle Decapitation, Portal, Blood Incantation, even though I've got to get into Blood Incantation. I've never been a huge fan of Blood Incantation, but my good friend Justin of Acid Metal keeps recommending them to me, as he says they're one of the most unique death metal acts in the circuit today in the scene. So I'm probably going to check out some Blood Incantation just to see why he hypes up this band so much. And I mean, I am open-minded. I'm willing to entertain the idea that there are other bands out there that other people recommend to me, including Coffin Texts, that was recommended to me once again by a good friend of mine, Gail of Shadows of Death Records. Now, once I knew that Emilio and Robert Cardenas were in this band, I was instantly interested, and I said, you know what, I'm going to review this album because I'd love to interview Robert, Emilio, and Richard from Coffin Text and get their thoughts on how this record is different than, obviously, than Possessed, and what it's like being in this band for Robert and Emilio versus being in Possessed, what the, you know, the different ideas and concepts that they're experimenting with here, and what's being brought forth with Coffin Text is obviously very different from Possessed. So I really want to pick their brain and understand, you know, the nuances, ideas, and directions that they chose to go with on the Tomb of Infinite Ritual from Coffin Text. Absolutely immaculately crafted death metal, and I highly recommend that if you haven't checked out this band yet, do so, because this is something you're going to get a lot of enjoyment out of. Mark my words. If you're a fan of death metal, you definitely need to get this album in your collection, and I will be doing so very, very soon as well. It's fucking perfect. And that production, once again, I want to talk about a little bit here, really keeps it from being too clean and approaching those trendy territories where production often gets too clean in death metal. And what you have is like that clicky, clean sound. You guys will know what I'm talking about. If you're fans of OSDM, you're going to understand what I mean there. As sometimes it can get border on dangerously clean. where it loses that sense of organic feel and the realism that should be shining through in a death metal offering. And now we come to the final verdict for Coffin Texts, The Tomb of Infinite Ritual. I'm scoring this fucking masterpiece a solid 10 out of 10. I've had a lot of 10s on the channel lately and 9s because I'm just hearing so much great stuff. I'm being introduced to so much great stuff. Not only for my own collection, there's a lot of good stuff, but the fact that I'm just constantly looking for new bands. This was a breath of fresh air and an OSDM classic. Pick it up for yourself. Time for some shoutouts and thank yous here on the channel. Shadows of Death Records. Go to shadowsofdeathrecords.com/list-2-music. Check out Gail's band. Support Shadows of Death. He is a great record label owner, friend, producer. He knows how to scout talent. Also, a shout out to Terry and the Pissing Razors and Texas Voodoo Stomp. You guys are welcome to come back on the channel anytime, as I'd love to have you back for another interview. Can't wait to see that, hear that upcoming album from Pissing Razors. And Texas Voodoo Stomp, get out there and win that spot at Vaughan. Can't wait to see you guys there. Also, a shout out to Jams Rockmore, the Texas legend. Can't wait to get him on the channel. Heavy Metal Networks, Metal Ben's Chronicles, Acid Metal King of Swords, Backwoods Metal, and of course, Farley's Nerd Cave. As always, if you enjoyed this video, smash the like button and subscribe and turn on the bell. Have yourselves an awesome night. We will see you later. Take care and stay metal.